Hello. This is weekly, 3 times a week now I'm Christina Tobin, and I'd love to introduce our guest for today, Chad Peace. Welcome to the sessions.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Great to have you as well. And it's been a decade in the making, knowing you and meeting you, and through the whole broad electoral arena. Chad is, I've really got to know him through, of course, Independent Voter Network, IVN, and the work you do here. It looks like you do IVC Media, which is like nationally recognized in election law and voter rights. And man, last year I got to see you in person. It had been a little while, a little gap in between, at this cool new movement organization called National Association of Nonpartisan Reformers. I like to call NANR, N-A-N-R. Chad, welcome. Could you introduce yourself and your background to our viewers who are meeting you for the first time?
Yeah, and we go way back to probably the beginning of the crazy days of I got started in this space. Full disclosure, I grew up in a very political family. My father was a Democrat, my mother and her whole side of the family, devout Republicans. So, graduated college, didn't want anything to do with politics. And then, there was the 2007 debate, or 7 presidential election, got involved with my business partner. I call our crazy Ron Paul days, watching this guy talking about civil liberties and ending wars on the Republican stage. And, so we got involved in that work and helped with some of the money bombs and some of the digital in that respect. Skip forward a few years, I'd gone back to law school. I think probably moderated my perspective a little bit. Was approached by the Independent Voter Project saying, hey, that crazy stuff you did online, can you do it for election reform? We're going to do this nonpartisan primary in California. That was probably the beginning of when I really started thinking about the election process. And I think the real frustration, why was I so frustrated? Why was it so shocking to see somebody talking about civil liberties on the Republican stage? And we see the same thing on the Democratic stage, is connecting the way we elect our representatives to really the lack of a discourse. And it really didn't have to do with the ideology per se. It had to do with anything that didn't fit within these two neat little boxes, really didn't get discussed. And it was so in doing that, over the years, I've been approached and helped work on voter education efforts in Maine for their ranked choice voting, helped do stuff for open primaries in Colorado. As Christina mentioned, I've been involved in, the folks that put together the National Association of Nonpartisan Reformers. My day job, because election reform doesn't exactly pay the bill. I wish it did, but it doesn't. That's obviously my passion, but day job, we have our company is called IVC Media. We do what I call nonpartisan digital communications. We're devoutly nonpartisan, which doesn't mean we don't work for Republicans and Democrats. I think one of the things, both in election reform, I think, and then as a company itself, we say, look, we got to stop seeing everybody as red or blue or green or whatever party affiliation they are. Is that there's good Democrats, there's good Republicans, there's good people who choose not to be Democrats and Republicans. And one of the things we believe that divides all of us and having a real discourse is not recognizing those nuances and not entertaining a discussion where, there's certain types of Republicans that could be very different than another type of Republican. Same with Democrats. And there's various levels of goodness and abusing the system within both parties and outside the party. So, that's kind of a broad scope. And then as an attorney, I have been involved. Most of my work has been done in the voting rights space, but with the perspective of how do we start addressing some of our election rules through the eyes of an independent voter? And most simply, that means, we have a history and body of laws that view the right to vote really through the lens of, does this help Democrats or Republicans? Is there an equal playing field between Republicans and Democrats? So some of the litigation I've been involved with is assisting with things like the lawsuit against the Commission on Presidential Debates. I've written multiple amicus briefs, essentially saying, this is not a nonpartisan debates commission. It's a bipartisan debates commission that is served to exclude anybody that is not selected by the two parties. To a lawsuit right now we're conducting in California, and we filed a lawsuit against California's semi-closed presidential primary system. Most people are probably not aware that it is a semi-closed presidential primary, even though the Constitution says it should be open. And through the eyes of an independent or individual voter, we're simply asking the court the question: does your right to vote come from by virtue of being a registered to vote citizen, or does it come when you affiliate yourself with a political party? We think if the answer is that it comes by virtue of being a citizen that registers to vote, then the state of California should not put as a precondition to participation in a taxpayer funded process having to join a private political party. So that's a lot. Hopefully, I tried to cover a lot of ground. Hopefully, I didn't bore everybody too much.
Well, having known you a decade, that was pretty easy to take in. But for new people, we'll see, because there's so much more. I would say of all the things that we've intertwined and worked on and met through, where we really aligned strongly, I love the fact that you helped, and with the brief for the lawsuit against the Commission on Presidential Debates. Yeah. And I really loved being a part of NANR last year. That is, saying it out loud again, National Association of Nonpartisan Reformers. Yeah. And that was, to walk into that, it was actually Rob Ritchie, the founder of Fair Vote, that was like, I got an extra ticket for you, well, too. And, then we brought in Brian Hedden, who I saw rock that promo video for you guys.
Which I did not script that. I did not tell him to use me at the front of the promo video, but I thank you and Brian, who did an excellent job. There was very little, feedback we had to give. You just, did a very excellent job.
He is the best with that, and he's done some promos for our United We Stand tour, and I just felt like you got to be at this event. So, I definitely look forward to working with them.
It was a pleasant surprise to have you there, and hopefully you have more participation as as COVID ends and we can do things in person again. But we want to have a bigger place for you, and that's what the association is all about. I mean, there's lots of us, we disagree on different strategies and different methods and stuff, but really the whole purpose of the association is, look, there's a lot of good people that have different perspectives on how to improve the system, but we don't start sitting down talking to each other and understanding the rationale behind our perspectives, we're just going to end up fighting in a corner. I think that's one of the things both parties have taken advantage of for decades, is that as long as we can, put people into two camps, and then the people who don't like anything, divide them amongst themselves, well, we can still win. And so what I like to see and like to think is happening is I don't know if I want to use the word institutional, but there's kind of a growing knowledge and relationship building amongst those of us who are trying to challenge the system, which I think we sometimes look at the money in politics and really underestimate how much powerful and how much value there is simply to the relationships and trust you can build with each other trying to challenge the system.
Well, I loved, there were a lot of cool panels there, but one that really stood out, that is, was on alternative voting methods. Brought all these ideas and viewpoints. You and the founder of Represent, right?
Yeah, Josh Silver, yeah.
Josh Silver, I thought it was him with you. And so you had all these different speakers. I know Aaron Hamlin was on there of Center for Election Science. We're going to have him on United We Stand session soon. And he's been a sponsor of our debates. And maybe Rob Fairvote was there, and just different viewpoints on whether approval voting may work better for some, maybe instant runoff voting works the best, or depends on the local. Yeah. But I love that you brought the ideas together, and even though there were differences, you and Josh were able to. Josh had a real feeling of uniting as well, and just having that dialogue. I love that. I love that you guys.
Josh does a great job of, I think, moderating the space too. I try to do my best, and even in ranked choice voting, I was dealing with a couple weeks ago. Shouldn't say dealing with. It's instructive for me. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been involved in litigation, and could have developed into an argument, I think became a very productive discussion of within ranked choice voting, the way you calculate the votes, right? There's different consequences and different outcomes you can get. So just part of it is just elevating the conversation, because a lot of times we go, okay, here's our idea. This is going to solve this problem that we're looking at, right? Well, what other problems aren't we seeing? What are the unintended consequences of that? And then what other problems are other people dealing with that you might see as congruous? So one of the things we just did, in San Diego was get the folks who were supportive of the nonpartisan primary, because the problem they're trying to deal with is that the parties have, when you have a partisan primary, like you have in most states where you have Republicans and Democrats control it, right, that they get an early chance to divide the electorate and determine the narrative, right? And so those reformers are saying we should have nonpartisan primaries where it doesn't give anybody a strategic or institutional advantage. Well, one of the unintended consequences of that, and I know you know this, Christina, is that in order to do that, you're going to limit the playing field. You're going to limit the candidate field to 2 after the primary, right? Well, that serves to prevent other voices from getting into the general election. So the folks like the ranked choice voting folks, I think, have done an admirable job in elevating this discussion at the national level and saying, okay, well, let's use ranked choice voting. And that allows us to expand the candidate field without creating the spoiler effect, without making voters feel like they're wasting a vote by voting for somebody and going to end up with somebody they really don't like. And so we had this coalition come together, say, look, those are both major problems, and let's propose a top 4 primary that's a nonpartisan primary, but instead of advancing 2, let's advance 4 and give third parties and independents a better chance of getting into the general election. So and then we may come up with something better, and other people have, and they're doing other stuff. But I think that's the exciting point in the reform space, I think, for me, is that we're understanding that this is a very complex process. It could be totally different solution in Kansas or Maine than it is in San Diego or Washington or anywhere else, because voters have different historic use of the voting process. They may have had a different style. They may currently have a different election process. The dynamics of it all might be different. And so and then you add on top of that states are given very wide latitude in order to determine how they want to conduct the time, place, and manner of elections. That gives election reformers, I think, a lot of difficulty on the one hand, because it needs to be done at state or local levels, but also opportunity, because it gives you an opportunity to explore different methods and try out different things in the real world that may be fit for a place like Alaska, but isn't quite fit for a place like Arizona. Who knows? So I like to think that's a very positive development.
I'm with you on that. I think one thing we can agree on, and everybody on that panel, is that anything is better than the current voting system, the singular vote. Like, it's just the worst one, and it's one of many different strategies and tools that a 2-party duopoly, really one party, uses to continue to get reelected over and over again. And we can go beyond ballot or beyond voting, which gets into voting machines, and mail-in ballots are a hot topic right now. I love that you had women representation at Nanner. Amber McReynolds really stood out, and thanks to you, she joined our, thanks to Nanner, we kind of just the energy came to our electoral reform symposium day after. Definitely down to collaborate more in that way in the future, and share contacts and help build together. But she does vote at home and mail-in ballots, and I learned so much from her. And gosh, anything seems better than on the ballot access side and closed presidential debates. And it's no wonder these candidates keep getting elected over and over again. I'm with you on working with really independent-minded Democrats and Republicans. I've done that on the ballot access side, that are just don't get help from the insiders. And I see every candidate as an individual, and really the only sort of candidates that gravitate towards free and equal elections are ones of integrity that aren't control or beholden by the powers that be, or big money, or banksters, or corporations, and so on. So I'm with you on that. Probably works with some of the same people.
Yeah,
like John Dennis, great guy. You know, running against Pelosi.
Johnny's an interesting guy.
Good for him.
But so
He's
independent. Well, that's part of what the association really for. A lot of people ask, what is the association? What reforms is it doing? And I say the association isn't out there to run reforms. It's not out there really to, quote unquote, do a lot. I think there's just a need for a table, a neutral table that facilitates the relationships. And right. And then, so Amber then going there and then participating in your symposium, that is the purpose of the association, right? Make the connections, have the discussions, and 2 members, 3 members, a whole host of members, a whole host of them went and supported our stuff in San Diego. We would have never gotten as far as we did. And now we have the momentum to really accomplish something here in San Diego. That could have never happened if we didn't start from day one, literally a phone call, email away from people we knew on a personal level saying, here's what we want to do in San Diego. Will you join it? I know this might not be the thing you're focused on, but will you support it? Okay, yeah, great. So, you know, I think those are the kind of the wins in the space that aren't really easily, tallied on a score sheet that are happening. And, thanks to groups like yours who've been doing this stuff for more than a decade, being able to meet folks, some of them newer to the space, and then building those relationships that leverage what everybody else has been working on.
It goes both ways. It's cool. There's few of us have really stuck it out this long, and then you and I in this age bracket too.
They're dumb enough to stick it out this long,
No, you know what?
We on the beach, but it's okay.
Not dumb. It's a conscience. It's my conscience that's kept me in this. So I know how to turn it off, Chad. I can just switch it off. I think living in Bali out of college for 3 years and being around the Balinese people and the Hindu ways and third eye meditation out of all that stuff, but I can just turn it off and then I can turn it back on because I'm in it for the journey. It's not a race, it's a journey. And just let you know, sometimes your internet's cutting out briefly. So if you have any other browsers open, you want to close them.
Yeah, pull my mic closer because my internet should be plenty fast. Is that better?
Yeah, we'll see, but I think it should be. And we got a comment here from Marshall Marsh. And anybody listening, if you have any questions for Chad, feel free to throw them our way. But Marshall says gerrymandering as well. Yeah, definitely another one of many race components, hence Dennis Kucinich not getting reelected. So gerrymandering is definitely a big one, and so on. So with Nanner, I want to shift a little bit more towards your work on the legal side against, you've done various projects, but as I mentioned before, awesome that you helped with the suit against the Commission on Presidential Debates. Could you tell our viewers in great detail, what that case entails and where we're at right now? I think there's some Supreme Court ruling maybe in the next couple months.
Well, it'll probably be a while. They just had another ruling against them in the lower courts, which, we all knew this is eventually going to have to go all the way up to the Supreme Court to be decided. But first, I want to give a shout out to Peter Ackerman and Kara McCormack, who have really been the drivers behind it. A lot of times we'll talk about, just filing a lawsuit, right? These lawsuits cost a lot of money and a lot of work and a lot of time. Alexandra Shapiro is the lead attorney on the lawsuit, is absolutely phenomenal. If you're watching it as an attorney, it's really unbelievable because I should say if you're watching it as a layperson, you got to be pulling your hair out going, how is this so hard? They have a mountain of evidence here. You're looking at the real world consequences. Doesn't anybody, don't people care about this stuff? But then you take a step back and you think about how, when you say institutionalized problem, and that term's kind of thrown out a lot these days without really, I think, a deeper explanation. What it means is that, okay, you have a commission on presidential debates that really formed and then became the de facto controller of the presidential debates after the League of Women. And, when they did, the League of Women voters actually dropped out was that 1992 basically said, the Commission on Presidential Debates has issued these rules. They're not to facilitate open discussion. It would not be fair to the American people for the League of Women to continue putting our name to this. We can't lend our name to this debate process because it's not fair. That alone should tell something to people. And that's
good for them.
That's 1992. So 28 years later, it hasn't gotten better. It's gotten a lot worse. So over that time, right? Well, you have what is the Commission on Presidential Debates? A lot of people might assume, well, this is some government entity or, with some committee. No, it's literally a private nonprofit organization, a C3, which means it's a tax deductible organization, and a tax deductible organization by law has to be nonpartisan. They can't participate in partisan politics. So you ask the question, well, who controls the CPD? Well, that is basically 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans control the board, and the board determines the rules of who gets to get in the debates and who doesn't. So then they go, okay, well, how do we have a nonpartisan rule for participation? Because we have to satisfy our IRS requirements of being nonpartisan. So they issue this neutral rule called the 15% rule, like a neutral rule. That's what's being challenged in the court, is that a rule that requires a candidate to get 15% in national polls isn't really a nonpartisan rule. It is a rule designed specifically to make sure that a third party cannot achieve that rule. They already know the Republican and Democrat nominee aren't going to have a problem getting over 15%. So then you go in, you start doing the analysis, and then you have the legal research showing how much it actually costs to get 15%, enough name ID to get to 15%. And then you analyze the pollsters that they use, which they don't tell you beforehand what polls they're going to use, but they also don't tell you that
Gabbard got a piece of that.
Right. And they also don't tell you that the pollsters that they use and rely on also do work for the Democratic and the Republican Party. So there's issues of conflict, right? Issues of consistency. Are you going to get 15% if they say, well, question 1, will you vote for the Democrat nominee? Question 2, will you vote for the Republican nominee? 17 more questions about, what size is your shoe? What is this and this? Question 19, will you vote for this third party nominee? The way you ask the questions and where you do can have a substantial effect on the outcome. So all of those challenges being made. Now, you asked about it, so I'm going to go into the wonky details.
Oh, details.
So then you add on top of that, well, who's in charge of enforcing the rules against the CPD, right? So, okay, if they're violating the rules, who's in charge of it? Well, you have the FEC, which a lot of people might also be aware is who appoints the officials at the FEC, the Federal Election Commission. Well, since this is an administrative body with people appointed to it by the people in power, you can imagine they tend to be more party interested folks. They're in charge of governing it. But since it is governed by an administrative agency, you can't just file a lawsuit against the CPD in state court. You first have to exhaust your remedies within the administration, within the administrative process, which means you have to file a lawsuit to the FEC, go into administrative court, exhaust all the rounds and appeals and everything there. And only then can you take it into state court. And then the standard for them even to hear the case is, did the administrative court make a decision that was arbitrary and capricious, right? It's a very high standard. Now, the first round, the judge actually did entertain that and said, it appears to me that this is a pretty arbitrary and capricious opinion because they didn't address any of the real arguments being made by the plaintiffs. He's just said, nah, it's a fair rule and, it's okay. So that did open the federal courts, the state court, to begin the discussion and have some litigation there. As I said, that doesn't mean they got a ruling in their favor. It just opened the door. We'll see where Peter Ackerman and the level of the playing field want to go from here. But it is a long, this was, started 4 or 5 years ago. And I think I've written 3 amicus briefs at this point. So you can say you still have a long road to go in the lawsuit 4 or 5 years later. We're just on behalf of Independent Voter Project written 3 amicus briefs. The amount of work level the playing field's done would be, stacked up a mile high. Just goes to show you, like, that's what you mean when they say institutional hurdle to addressing an injustice. Very few people, I think, on the planet are like somebody like Peter Ackerman that would invest his own resources to get what out of it? Nothing other than the American people having a better debate.
Right. Yeah, I love that he tried to pursue Americans Elect back in the day and got 35 ballot lines, and for whatever reasons didn't go all the way through on it, but I'm sure he had good reasoning for that. But then has taken a strong stand against a really corrupt Commission on Presidential Debates that, like you said, the League of Women Voters retracted their support from it. It might have been 1988, maybe it's 92. I got
you probably
one of those a long time ago. You're probably right, but in stating that it had perpetuated a fraud on the American voters, the CPD, a fraud on the American voters. So, yeah, definitely good on him. Law judicial system for sure. I mean, you're dealing with people that are, appointed on the Supreme Court level by the one-party duopoly. But I'm all about overcoming odds. I think placing that lawsuit on a national platform, potentially tying it around a presidential debate, could be a really smart strategy in putting it in the spotlight, that lawsuit that it very well deserves. And my hope is that that will happen, because we definitely need to call out. I mean, the fact that it's run by the former chairs of the Democratic and Republican parties, the CPD, thumbs down. So
going back to your the commenter talked about gerrymandering. It's very similar. Why, gerrymandering, one of the, I think the changes, the progress we've been making is that states are slowly using independent commissions to draw the lines rather than relying on people appointed by the parties, or most often the party in power. Similar thing, should the CPD be determining rules and who gets to and when the debates are, when they have an interest in the parties themselves that obviously have a substantial interest in who wins and who gets exposure in the debates. So, should we have an independent debate commission? I don't know, but how would you go about accomplishing that? That's the hard question.
Well, you know how. We just simply unite hundreds, 500,000 of independent-minded organizations across the political spectrum around a debate that's truly for the people. And, that's what's going to happen in the future. Whatever cycle, it's 20, hopefully 2024. Free and equal elections, we're moving forward. Thank you so much, Chad, you and Nanner and Represent Us and all the organizations, Fair Vote, for supporting our presidential debate this past March. We had, before the primary, we had 18 candidates running for president from 10 different political affiliations participate in that debate at the Chicago Hilton. Chad, that was the most difficult moderating job. 10 hours straight. It was like 5 hours back to back. So we're going to do another one this fall. Lesson learned. I'd never done a debate before the primary, and I thought maybe 5 or 7 candidates would say yes, and we had far more than 18 that wanted it, probably a couple dozen more. That was a huge compliment towards, we adjusted and split it into 2 debates, and Jo Jorgensen, who's been nominated for the Libertarian Party, was part of that debate, participated in March. She did a beautiful job. And Howie Hawkins, who's the Green Party nominee. We go back, Howie and I, since 2008. I met him doing the national ballot access job with Nader. I would have done it for Ron Paul. All about more voices, more choices on the ballot. But Howie was the guy I handed the signatures over to in New York that knew all. That guy knows, he's the real deal on the ground. So, and Joe appears to be as well. And good on them, giving back to their country. So thank you for that and your support this last March. Really appreciate that.
Happy to. That's one of the hard parts about, I think you know this, but you've obviously learned to deal with it over your years of this work, is dealing with that reform is not ideological. And go back to the example I gave about Ron Paul, or whether it's a Green Party candidate or something else. It's not like reformers and the people that believe in fairness of the process, right? You have to separate the ideology and the policy perspectives of the people that are fighting for them. If you really believe in a representative democracy with a small d, right, you have to believe at its core that it's the ability to have a fair hearing of all the different perspectives that produces the best outcomes. And I believe, could be wrong, that's really what unites the folks that are frustrated with the system. And whether it's a Bernie Sanders, or whether it's a Tulsi Gabbard, or whether it's somebody, frankly, a lot of people for Donald Trump. A lot of folks, their perspective is there may be all these kinds of things they do or don't like about this candidate or that, or I may agree with them on this, but it's something about these candidates at the end of the day will fight for the fairness. Now, I'm not saying that's a right judgment these folks are making on these candidates, but that there's a belief that the system is rigged, and that folks that don't just abide by the system and salute it deserve the support. And, how do you capture that? And how do you keep those coalitions together who are, once you get down into policy issues, might be on complete different sides of the spectrum? That's the hard part.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I want to also give a shout out to Eli Beckerman of Open the Debates. That debate, wow, that was having him be our co-host helped make that debate a reality. And Catherine Gell also is a sponsor, paid sponsor, and hope to have both of them on a live stream together pretty soon. Mm-hmm. And the United We Stand for Free and Equal Elections team as well. You all know who you are. You just saw there was just a speckle of them at the debate, and there'll be even more, all of them and more coming together and uniting on the United We Stand tour this fall. We have 2 stops. House, New Mexico. We're sponsoring Tribal Vision, Chad. It's their 15th annual festival. And we're going on a private ranch, and that's September 25th through the 27th that weekend. And then the following weekend, we're sponsoring Sister Winds, the 2nd year in a row, 12th annual, up in Boulder, Colorado. And then we'll have our presidential debate. We already have a place landed in Denver, but we're open to expanding it. But we're moving forward in Denver for now. We definitely have some energy pulling us to DC press room, national press room, or whatnot after that one. We're open to doing 2, but I'm committed to 1 right now.
I always try to keep it as simple as possible.
It's a lot of work. So the moderator role is no easy task, but it's definitely an art, and definitely mastered that one. So since 2008, 12, 16, 24 cycles now. Yeah, pretty good to go. So, Chad, what are you working on right now down in San Diego with your project there?
Full disclosure, I mean, on the election reform front, we have a coalition that pushed, we were short by 1 vote to put it on the ballot this year, but that momentum, as I mentioned, I'm confident we're going to have something here in a couple of years. But right now, we're not, the coalition staying together to do educational events and start continuing the discussion here in San Diego. As I mentioned, I just got a motion from the state of California the other day on the lawsuit that we filed. And then, my day job, I work for a few candidates. I work on a number of initiatives. We're just getting started on a privacy initiative here in California. And, on those ones, like I said, that's the day job. That's how we keep the doors open. And so it's definitely a busy time of year, juggling, I think it's 20 something different projects right now. And then we're actually set to announce it tomorrow, but might as well while we're here. IVN.us has been a national platform to cover things like the United Stand Tour and different reform stuff. We actually are launching tomorrow a local version of IVN San Diego, because this is our backyard. to be a model that can really explore issues that are really specifically important to San Diego, but from outside the kind of, or beyond, outside, however you want to describe it, the kind of the political narrative of how everything tends to get simplified and kind of watered down. So that's exciting. We're not trying to launch something that is going to recreate a local news or compete with the local news stations. In fact, we always call it an open platform. We have a simple etiquette. And so it's, hey, can we introduce a news website that's really open to thought leaders and people in the community who want to talk about things that aren't really covered either in depth, fully in the news, or aren't covered from a different angle, and let the folks talk. And part of it is also sharing and promoting the content and news that is produced by other folks that we think helps to serve a better conversation. So it's a little different approach to news, but we're excited to launch tomorrow. So that's another thing I've been doing a little bit of work on, and just plugging away.
Well, I appreciate all the work and what you've given back to our country, and I think you're kind of just getting started, just so you know.
Look at you.
So much more to come. What's going on right now, Chad? We've had experts on, the founder of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Richard Gage, a couple weeks back. Of course, G. Edward Griffin, author of The Creature from Jekyll Island. So when you talk about the Commission on Presidential Debates, it's a private entity. So is the Federal Reserve. It's not federal. Why didn't they call it the private reserve? We know why, to trick us and fool us and so on. But we have like 9/11, and I think University of Alaska just came out, and they just analysis. Gage has like over 5,000 architects and engineers. They're like, our government had a lot to do with 9/11, and I try not to go down that rabbit hole. I stay on the fact that we think our government could be capable of such a thing is a problem. But with today's times and the current coronavirus, SARS-2 versus SARS-1, so much divisiveness, right? It's interesting to see what Congress, like what they did right after 9/11, right? The National Defense Authorization Act implemented, the Patriot Act.
Still got the Patriot Act.
Huh?
And we still have them.
Right? They just, continued it on. Shame on Congress, really. I just think that I foresee that they're making it really easy to replace them all. House Bill 6666. Wow. That's what they're doing. And they can't even have voting through phones, but they can implement House Bill 6666. They don't know how to do blockchain voting, but they can do that. So what's going on? It's a lot of divisiveness and a lot of fear over love right now, but
I think a lot of it is a lack of transparency. Naturally is going to breed more conspiracy, right? And lack of being truthful or outright. And so, I don't have the answers to a lot of these things. And you like to think the truth is probably somewhere in between. Is that, sometimes we if you don't get the full, there's not full transparency. Sometimes you get misinformation simply because somebody that had, access to something is embarrassed by their own failure and then go to seek to cover it up, right? And this and that. So, I think one of the things, if you put it in the reform box, I think it's an issue that is very important to a lot of reform advocates, is simply transparency, and that we have, we'll figure out what conspiracies might have merit to them, but more likely figure out what the real story is, which is probably not the public narrative nor the conspiracy, but something that is a combination of a lot of different complex circumstances. If we were honest with everybody, if we said, okay, what are the reports? Can we read the reports? Can we see the reports? And unfortunately, right now, there is a lot of secrecy, and you don't often know whether it's something being hidden because of embarrassment or because there's something corrupt or for some other motive. It's hard to tell without transparency.
Well,
or maybe simple disclosure helps one political side over the other, and so they don't want it to be. Sometimes it's that simple.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, in the end, truth always rises. And I'm in a clear mindset of while all this chaos and distractions are coming on, I just eye on the prize, and that love is greater than fear and love will win. And I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And as long as I'm here on earth, breathing and alive, the realism to me is we can fix it. And on one end, it's going to be challenging. We got to come together. It's going to take a lot of work. But on the other end, the system is just crumbling. It's almost like this last ditch effort is happening to just, anything and all. It's just interesting to watch. And I do foresee something beautiful rising that's beyond one person, but of so many ideas and so many people coming together to unite our country like never before. And we see so much of it happening, Chad, throughout the world. It's like, all right, America, like once we rise, and we will, and we wake up and come together, the whole world's going to follow us. I'm so excited for that. And for anybody that is in a state of dismay or sad or down, just realize this too shall pass. Just realize this too shall pass. I mean, beautiful things are coming on the horizon. They have to be.
The further something swings, pendulum swings, not on the ideological scale, but something seems to get more crazy and more turmoil and more this, that creates the circumstances for disruption to come in there and create more stability. So, I'm kind of with you. You go through your periods of, oh man, this is just so bad. You never, blah, blah, blah. I do have this overriding sense of optimism, which I share with you, has been increased over the last year or something by seeing things that, they're not covering them in the day-to-day news, and you don't read it on the front days of the newspaper because there's no COVID calculations involved. It's just, that was a joke. Is that,
yeah.
There's progress going that's leading to.
That was smooth. Right? Too smooth. It was too easy to miss because it was too smooth. Yeah, the calculation.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you. I think there's momentum towards something that is truly positive and things that are going to happen. And like you, I don't know whether it's going to be 4 years, 8 years, or whether there will be a particular day you'll say, oh, there's something major happened that changed the outcome. But I do think over the next, decade or so, there's going to be significant changes, because those changes will be grounded in folks that are just interested in having a more fair system, having a more representative system. And I think if there's anything to see the light, I guess, in the crazy year we've had from COVID to, all the other things that have been going on in the world, is that connecting that the political process itself to our ability to handle these kind of problems. And I think a lot more people are making that connection. That's the first step. I
really agree with you on the word. And it's really cool you brought it up, the word pendulum. Artist by the name of Page, he actually performed at our after party after our debate with Larry King, co-moderated with in 2012. And he has a song which now Free and Equal Elections owns, but to me it's his and ours. It's called Pendulum, and the main part is the pendulum swings from the left to the right, but I'm stuck somewhere in the middle. And having been connected really organically to quite a few civil rights leaders and mentors, Bernard Lafayette being one who worked closely with John Lewis, Amelia Boynton Robinson being another one, whom I was a true hero in. She was the spark of Selma. She's the one that 30 years, her and her husband, Samuel B. Robinson, built the energy in her community of Selma and brought the people in to march across the bridge of Montgomery, which evolved into Bloody Sunday. Chad, she was beaten and tear gassed and left for dead. And it was because of her and her connections to Martin Luther King that brought him in, and that evolved into the Voting Rights Act of, I think, 65, Ramsey Clark, 64 maybe, I'll look that up, drafted the Attorney General at that time under Lyndon B. Johnson and Kennedy as well, JFK. And so I feel like this chaos, it's nothing new, created by the system, right? The pendulum swinging, and I'm stuck somewhere in the middle. But when technology evolves, Chad, when we get the right people in office targeting Congress first, 235 states, maybe 234, because I like Thomas Massey out in Kentucky. He's like the one that definitely is so welcome to speak on our stage for United We Stand Tour. But when that happens, it's like all the races will fall into place. I do see a blockchain. We're going to launch our blockchain election system app, the first version of many at our presidential debates this October 8th in Denver, Colorado right now on a Thursday. And in that app, we will list every single candidate targeting congressional candidates first over time. Running for office, D's, R's, third parties, independent candidates. Civil rights leaders are messaging to me to build an independent candidates movement, right? Mm-hmm. And so we can see beyond party lines, and sure, many D's and R's, and I like to say alternative parties, libertarians, Greens, and so on, will plug into it, but many of them are using party lines. I feel, if not all that are truly outsiders of the system. So in the blockchain ledger, we will transform our elections and bring about political transparency. And when we do that, beyond elections, technology is the next thing. You can already see all the, the space warfare and ownership and government. You own water and air and space. What do you, you're so out of control. Like, what are you thinking? They're not. So in fact, the government having lost 21 trillion, was it between, I was learning from the book by Lee Camp, 21 trillion over a 5-10 year cycle. That's a lot of money. That's like stacking $1,000 bills 62 miles in the air. That's how much money has been accounted by our government. Wow. So anyway, I could keep going on and on, but the blockchain ledger seems to be the best thing right now, and it's going to become obsolete in 5-10 years. It'll be something even better. So, Chad, where can we find, plug the websites again for the projects you're doing, and then we're going to wrap up here.
Yeah, I think for those who are looking to just see like a broader kind of scope of the reform space, and obviously it's not totally comprehensive, but a lot of the groups involved in the space, going to nonpartisanreformers.org. There are a lot of folks are involved. Like as you mentioned, Catherine Gell, she's honorary co-chair. She's been instrumental in, basically given a lot of her life and resources to this space. Interesting.
Just her book too.
Yeah, it's a great book. She co-authored with Michael Porter. I think Catherine is the expertise on the election side. Michael brings his perspective from the business world. It's a fascinating book with I think it does a good job of explaining to folks maybe coming from a more business-minded, conservative, whatever you want to call it, perspective of making a case for election reform that's generally made, resonates more with folks on the left. So check out nonpartisanreformers.org. Organization that I've been with for a long time, Independent Voter Project, is independentvoterproject.org, pretty hard to remember. And also the news website that is they're a co-publisher of is ivn.us. So it's probably enough to get going there. But I think is one thing I always point out too is I represent the Independent Voter Project a lot, and I say, and it goes back to what we had, is that the reason I'm also optimistic is because that there's a lot of folks, Republicans, Democrats, who are in the system, so to speak. They actually agree with what we want to do, and they're not. But the timing has to be right for everybody who believes in it to have this coming together and make things happen. Right. The last thing somebody within the system who has an ability to be that person at the right time is going to out themselves and end their political career by taking a stand at the wrong time. So that's our job, for everybody involved in the space to set the conditions, which requires getting your friends to understand what's going on, doing the education so people know what reform really means and why you're doing it, right? And setting the conditions that the folks inside and outside the system can kind of come together and make an institutional change that for an institution that spent 100 years protecting itself from the people trying to change it.
Well, I really appreciate you, Chad. I, want to end on the note of thanking you and Peter Ackerman for rocking it. I know what it's like to overcome the odds, and we free and equal elections. We sued UCLA, and we won. And we won last September. And Chad, I was offered multiple times 6 figures and then some from UCLA, and ended up where I did not take the money, and I took the risk and got the win. The cash settlement was, not as much as what UCLA had offered to settle prior, with also signing a confidentiality agreement. And I'm like, well, you already censored us once by wrongfully breaching the contract in 2014 and canceling United We Stand, our first annual. Like, Chad, we had Public Enemy as a headliner, and Larry King, and Ben and Jerry, and Marianne Williamson, and Dennis Kucinich, and Immortal Technique. And I mean, the list went on and on and on. Tons of independent media, and they canceled wrongfully. So the win was far more important than the money. And I would not change a thing on that. And I'm glad we got the win. So in any way we can help with our efforts through Free and Equal Elections and our debate this fall, help to shed an even wider or national spotlight on the lawsuit that you and Ackerman and your team have, Kara McCormack and so on, have filed against the CPD. We are there to do that, hands down. And no matter, we're all about exchanging at Free and Equal. I would love for you and Manor and, IVN team. I've been watching your blogs and articles recently. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so on the same page as Free and Equal Elections. All right, we're there. And IVP and so on, coming together to unite for our debate. And whether there's monetary, what we can do with a little bit of money, a lot. I think 150,000 we have.
One thing you learn in this space, you learn how to do a lot with a little.
Well, we did have 100,000 in funding back in 2012 for the Larry King debate, and we reached, the reach was about 1 billion. As far as viewerships, is probably easily 500,000, hundreds of thousands. But it was international media that covered us, Chad, and we know why, because here in the U.S., they like to black out ideas and conversations and thoughts. And so, yeah, no good. We're going to break through that no matter. We have to, and we will. So I welcome you and the whole team to be with us, no matter, even if it's exchange of time or promoting. Come on and be a part in that way of a non-paid sponsor. So Chad, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to definitely you and your people and all through New Mexico and Colorado are welcome to speak on the United We Stand stage. We're going to have just artists, speakers, and core team volunteers only at this time, and put all of our proceeds really towards making sure everybody's nourished and fed well, gas money, and the live stream. The live stream is where it's at. So thank you, Chad.
Yeah, well, we have more to talk about, and there's a lot more we can do together. It's you said, it's a marathon. I'm glad to be running with you and a whole bunch of other good people. And from a Bruin, congratulations and thanks for having
Yeah, that was a big win, and it will be released in greater detail in a book in the future through the tour. And I mean, they did not want Public Enemy to perform there. It was, here's a university that's like, we're all about diversity, and after reading 500 pages of internal emails from administration and the dean and all, who's tied to Hillary Clinton, Robert Naples, and Rich Milan, the Poly Pavilion, those guys have a lot of room for improvement when it comes to integrity and where they are. That lawsuit in itself helped me to see behind the scenes, and I can actually speak about it in greater detail and release the documents when I want, which is far more invaluable than a Federal Reserve note. So, because I think it's going to be cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, which actually has been funding us mostly. Dash and Nexus and Ethereum. That's kind of where it's at for our tour these days. So, all right. Well, thanks for hearing me out, Chad. Did you have any final words? We're at the end here.
Thank you all, and thank you. And it's great to be reconnected whenever, kind of cross paths like this. And it's great reconnecting. I know we got a lot of good stuff to do together, and appreciate everything you've been doing for so long. And, we'll hopefully we can get together in person soon once the world lets us again.
I'm up in Cambria. I just opened a shop here a couple months ago, and it's worth more than the settlement that UCLA offered. So there you go, UCLA. But being able to see the win, that was more of like clearing our name and reputation, because they really tried to pull us under and make the event not happen. But it ended up happening in 2014 at an alternative venue. Literally booked the day of 5 hours before, and thousands of people showed up. It was a miracle. And thank you to the people. The Gambles of Thrive were pivotal in making that a reality in this day. I cannot wait to see them again in person and thank them and work everything out. So for what they did. Chad, thank you so much. And I look forward to working with you and the team. And I am super stoked to be a part of Nanner, however, at whatever level, side by side with your team, or to help promote, whatever you guys want, whatever you're feeling. I'm in it for the long haul. So thank you for what you do, and I'll see you soon again.
Christina, I appreciate it.
All right, Chad, peace. All right, have a great one. Thanks for joining us on the United We Stand sessions.